What's the weirdest fetish someone you were interested in has had? NSFW. So I consider myself pretty open-minded. Most fetishes don't shock me, but I was casually dating a guy who had a driving fetish. Not a let's fool around on a road trip fetish. I mean, new baby, tell me every detail about how you are driving fetish. He wanted to know the position of my legs and hands. How gently was I pushing on the gas pedal? How hard was I pushing on the brake? How fast I was going? He loved it. Got off on it. It was unique. He paid to put gas in my car for those few months so that as nice 8/10 would do it again. My ex had a weird fetish. She used to dress up like herself and act like a total itch. I had a GF once who absolutely loved it when I squished her big toe. No other toes. Just the big one. And I mean duck and squeeze that little bastard. Sweat on my brow. Using both hands. Gritting my teeth and pinching her toe with all my might. I swear I was hurting her, but she insisted that it didn't hurt at all and felt wonderful. Made her tingle all over. There was nothing else sexual that she liked. Foot related. I tried sucking on her toes once and she laughed so hard she kicked me in the face. One time a car kind of ran over her foot and the look she gave me told me we had to go home. Now, pretty sure she had a petite mort right there in the street with the car on her foot. She just about sucked my soul out through my D1's home. I made a playful bet with an ex about something that I can't remember, but the winner of the bet got to have a sexual fantasy fulfilled. Well, I wanted to duck her in her shower, and she told me she wanted to have a sex with me in a bathtub filled with blood. She didn't specify whose or what's blood it would be, but yeah, that was definitely the weirdest fetish someone asked of me. I made sure I didn't lose the bet. She enjoyed drinking and eating cum. Like she wanted me to jerk off in a shot glass before work and she would drink it when she got home. She would sometimes spread cum on a piece of bread and eat it. I used to work in an actual BDSM dungeon. I have seen 1. A guy who liked to have you spank him directly on his enormous hemorrhoid with a wooden spoon until it bled. 2. A guy who would pay a girl to lay on the ground like she was dead and then would drive a remote control car into her and pretend like it was a car bomb. 3. A naked 400 pounds man who paid me to ride him like a pony with a rope tied around his balls to steer him. 4. The guy who paid me to pretend to be Catwoman as in the old school Adam West era bad pun telling Catwoman. He wasn't at all clear going into it what he wanted, and got very pissy when I couldn't read his mind. That wasn't so much weird as awkward and unpleasant for me. 5. The guy who turned to me as soon as we started and began begging me to smell his farts. This was not part of our discussion beforehand. I declined and told him the session was over, so he got mad, spun around, bent over, spread his ass cheeks and let fly with the nastiest ass blast while I had front row seats. He was thrown out and blacklisted, and oh so many more. Small D humiliation. Not that unusual, but the problem was that his D was huge, like comically large, uncomfortably big, intimidatingly oversized. So I'd be telling him what a tiny cock he had, how I could barely feel it inside me, etc. and struggling to disguise either an amused eye roll or a pained grimace, depending on what we were doing. That was fun. This is weird, but it's just life for us. My wife likes to be a little lost alien boy with wings escaping a war in his home universe. He likes to dress as a girl. There's a lot of backstory and some of it involves a time-traveling sibling and a royal family. I tie him up and molest him, rape him, convince him to duck me. Sometimes I'm just a stranger. Sometimes I'm his older brother. Sometimes I'm his twin. Sometimes I'm his father. No, we do not plan on having kids. But neither of us are actually into real incest. It's just fantasy. Just want to make that clear. Most recently I've been his owner. As he's been sold off, this fantasy has a complicated storyline that we rigorously stick to. We use dildos, plugs, vibrators, you name it. While molesting him, I've whipped him. I've tied him down and forced his face into the pillow so he can't breathe. DP. I've choked him. I've done rope body harnesses to keep a vibrator tightly in place while he squirmed and begged until climax. That one is actually my favorite. It's not just her thing. It's our thing. I don't think I'm 100% straight and I definitely enjoy the dark side element to our relationship. Works for me. We have only been with each other our whole dating and sexual lives. I've known her since kindergarten and we were together sexually for the first time at age 11. And at that age you're sometimes still into make-believe. She and I just never had to stop or pretend to be grown-ups when we didn't want to be. We also have very sweet loving times of intimacy. And sometimes she plays a girl character. But you're asking for the weird. I suppose this is a bit odd. But I love it. And I'm pretty sure nobody else can fulfill me sexually like she can because of all the intimacy, time, and commitment involved in our very creative sex life. I wouldn't want to try to have normal sex. I've never really had it. It just doesn't interest me. Edit. I forgot to mention that other equally important characters are occasionally shared between the two of us. Some are assigned to one of us exclusively, but others we trade back and forth. So I can duck her as one character, and then duck that character, and it honestly isn't even something we bat even an eye at. It's not even something we discuss, it's so normal for us. So if you tell me to go duck myself, I have. I had a girlfriend who loved getting banged for at least 3 minutes at a time. She was too weird for me. A girl I briefly went out with had a sweat thing. She loved it. We'd be rutting away and she'd start licking my sweat and said it tasted delicious. It got weird fast though. I'd come home from a run and she'd be waiting for me, naked, in the bathroom. I'd remove my clothes and she'd lick me all over, finishing with a lengthy rim job. I'm a sweaty man. I'm also a hairy man. I'm sorry for the imagery. It's not that weird, but I always felt weird about it. In college I used to date this guy who was really suicidal. He used to tell me how he was hanging on by a thread. Some days he couldn't get out of bed. We were friends but also had a sexual relationship when he was feeling it. But when we were asexual, he liked to get hit and told that he was a piece of it. Which was darn weird considering that hours before he was telling me that he wanted to kill himself because he felt like a piece of it, sobbing uncontrollable tears. Yet during sex, he'd get harder and longer than anything I'd ever seen. It just wasn't comfortable for me though, so I didn't keep it up. My first ever boyfriend had a hardcore ball torture fetish. I guess it's quite common. But when you're 15 and being made to stand on someone's balls with heels on, while they're tied up with a plug cable, that's pretty odd. Still don't understand how his balls didn't pop. She wanted to call me dad, or daddy, or papy, dad. A few years ago, I was messing around with a girl that liked for me to bang her doggy style while she stuck her head in the oven. Of course the oven was not on, but that was some weird it. She took it kind of seriously, but nearly every time we did it that way, it was really hard for me to not laugh. Edit. Folks keep on asking. So for the record, she was not Jewish. She was Dominican. This is pretty tame, but it's weird because I've never heard of it before. My FWB likes covering my mouth during sex so that my moaning becomes muffled. But he's not into any kind of choking or strangling. I can still breathe through my nose. He just likes how the noises sound with my mouth covered, or how I sound when sucking him off and he's fingering me. A guy I know has a scat poo fetish. He disconnects the water from his toilet when he has a girl over, and if they need to he tells them it's okay and he'll get a plumber in. But for now to go for it, they leave a big, steaming log in there and I don't want to know what he does with it, and lately he's been paying girls to it in his toilet and leave it there. Also another scar related one. I was doing this casual thing with a girl and one day I went over to see her and she had plastic drop sheets in the lounge room. She was pretty freaky, but this made me run. She wanted us to both sit on the plastic drop sheets and duck in it and roll around in it. Goo. My girlfriend is really into vor. Her biggest fantasy is to be eaten alive. She masturbates to videos of animals eating other animals, preferably alive. She loves cannibalism, and when I talk dirty to her I tell her how I'd kill and prepare her, cook her, and eat her. It's really weird to me, but she says to her it's the ultimate act of submission and powerlessness. She's into a lot of other kinks, but that was the weirdest one to grasp. Gas masks. It just reminded me of that Doctor Who episode where the kid's going around asking people if they're his mummy. Creeped me out. We didn't last long. Frying pans. I worked with a guy who had this thing for frying pans. He collected movies with people clocking each other on the head with frying pans. Had his own personal collection of frying pans. and would shiver with delight at the thought of spanking or being spanked with a frying pan. For his birthday one year, I bought a copy of Esquire with an article about 10 things every man needs. Number 1. Cast iron frying pan. I knew this guy who would want us to get completely naked except for wearing sailor hats. Then we'd get in a jacuzzi filled with Pepto-Bismol while he clipped my toenails and I'd shave his buttocks. This probably isn't too weird, but I had a girlfriend that liked to watch me pee. Sometimes she would sit next to the toilet on the tub and watch, or want me to pee on her in the shower. He wore a diaper, and used one publicly. He wanted me to wear one, and use it, so he could change it. He also wanted me to sit in his face while wearing it and use it because he liked the smell and sounds. I dated a lake girl for a few weeks one summer. She loved giving me hand jobs in the lake right in front of people without them knowing. The water was always really murky. We'd be having a conversation with others just feet away while sharing a drink and a smoke, while shenanigans were happening just beneath the surface unbeknownst to them. Another one would have me caress her. You know, this is more embarrassing to share than initially thought because I obviously partook in the fetish even though it wasn't mine. Them being interested in me, too. This thread makes me realize that I'm not as weird as I thought. In high school, about 15 years ago, the girl I was with had read all of the Anne Rice vampire novels. She wanted to cut her palm open and rub her blood down my back while banging. I politely declined. I've gone way too far down on these comments. She poured Gatorade in my freshly used condom and drank the contents. Lord of the Rings. She went all Gollum on my D, like called it precious and creepy it like that. She asked me to break in and abuse her while wearing a mask. She thanked me for doing it once. When I explained it wasn't me, she thanked me for going so far into it. I have a friend who worked in the fetish industry for a decade and she said the majority of her work didn't involve actual sex. Anyways, one of the weirdest customers she had was this guy who would pay up front to do errands for her. He paid her to clean her house, mow the lawn, and various household chores while my friend acted stern and cold towards him, as per his request. The same guy also paid extra to curl up at the foot of her bed and the side of her bed on occasion, like a dog. $500 just to curl up on the foot of her bed for half an hour. Edit. I realize now the question called to relate to someone I was interested in, but I thought it'd be an interesting story nonetheless. GF could only come if I complied when she screamed bite my clit. Bite my duckine clit. It was pretty hot tbh. Chopstick in the d-hole for pleasure. One time I was making out with someone and she asked me to tell her about jQuery while doing so. It was very distracting. This one guy I went out with was into thinking himself off, like lying in bed and imagining sex until he comes without touching himself. In college, I dated this girl who liked me to jack her off with my feet. My ex had a secret collection of mother-son porn. First and last time I ever look at a boyfriend's porn, I learned my lesson. Had to be highly aggressive sex, like knocked out from the shadows and waking up hog-tied and being railed. It was a fun couple of years. Mentioned my FWB boss on here earlier. Well, she was into weird stuff. At first it was costumes, then choking, then full-on abuse play. In the last month of our relationship, she wanted me to duck her while she was flung out the window. In the middle of the freeway, we did this one on the shoulder, at a crack motel. Essentially, she wanted it to be dangerous. Like really dangerous. Blood, only one so far I have completely not understood whatsoever. Spreading Nutella on my D before she gave a blowjob. Being cooked and eaten alive. My fetishes still beat theirs, though. I mean, I seem to attract a lot of kinksters. Being a kinkster myself, one of the many things my ex-fiance registered sign liked me to put small random objects from around his house in my V. Then he would put them back in their place and just go about normal business using them as needed. He liked the faint whiff of V he would get around those objects, apparently, and he also felt a sort of closeness with me at the same time. He also liked to watch me pee and take out my tampons. I didn't really get it, but no harm, no foul. Right? My current boyfriend likes all sorts of fun stuff. One of the new things for me is messiness. He likes lying on a clean bed and me making him messy. Food, oils, colors, powders and spices. Anything messy, really. I enjoy it. It's kind of like painting a canvas. But he's a person. And has 6. We also do all sorts of other fun stuff. From BDSM, cross-dressing, pegging, pet play, to more niche kinks like condom play, diaper play, branding body writing, yiff, and even some edge play, like controlled fire play, which was also new and super fantastic to me. We also share a small fascination with water sports. But we haven't experimented yet. Edit. Verb agreement. English is hard. I used to date a jurisprudence fetishist. She got off on a technicality. She was sexually interested in her brother. Full blood sibling. I noped out of that. Premarital coitus in the missionary position for the sole purpose of recreation. Okay. So she dressed like a nun and called me Jesus. Happy? Girl I knew in high school was a hardcore furry weeaboo cosplayer. She was a solid 9/10. It was hard trying to talk to her on a normal friendly level, but damn that ass. A lot of these comments talk about girls who like to be choked or abused or something like that. Being a guy, I really wouldn't mind doing it if it makes you happy, but why does it appear to be such a common fetish? I dated a guy online for a while. We met twice without ever having sex. And one day, he told me he wanted a woman who would poop on him once a month. He told me he would pay for me to live if I would just do that for him. I told him that he didn't need me. He needed a psychiatrist. That was the end of the relationship. Also, I dated a guy for a while, and one night I woke up to him wearing fake vampire teeth and pulling my tampon out with them, followed by him sucking on the tampon. A few years ago I was with a girl who loved 3 things and found literally everything else as sexually uninteresting. 1. Anal. Not the nice anal that you would normally have, but rough and borderline rappy. 2. Vegetables and fruit anally and veally. 3. Extreme deep throating. I'm talking almost throat rape. Maybe she had a too normal life or something. I would have been able to roll with it had she not been so bored by anything else. I mean, it's Thursday. We both had a long day, can't we just cuddle and watch a movie instead of you yelling at me to abuse your anus and throat while you press a strawberry up your vajayjay? No? K then. Unzips. Edit. I love Reddit. Post something about rappy anal sex and vegetables inserted into bodies and the only response is correction of spelling from literary to literally equals D. I dated 2 separate girls that enjoyed putting me in women's clothes. Well, it wasn't someone I was romantically interested in. But there was this odd fellow who lived near the main street in the town I live in. And he would join me and my co-workers for games of hacky sack after we got off work at night sometimes. Who was notable because he was missing a leg and would play while holding himself up on a crutch. You would think the oddest thing about this gentleman is that he liked to play hacky sack with only one leg. But what was really odd was when he would start talking about his love of trees and how he feels like his soulmate is a tree that was a couple blocks away. He taught us all the words dendrophilia and paraphilia, which mean to love and to be physically aroused by trees. Strange times. Not a person I'm with, but it's my best friend. As long as I've known him, he's had a hard-on for girls with red hair and eating things off their backs. But it has to be really fatty American food. He lives in France, so the food alone gets him going. Bartender at my previous job lost part of his finger. The nub tip was super sensitive and he liked to rub it on my hair. He practically came from doing it. Guys, I've seen vor on here several times. I don't know what it is and I'm scared to Google it. Okay, so the things I actually did, like to be choked nearly to the point of passing out, face slapping, and she got off being ducked with a knife against her throat. This is obviously on top of all the less kindy stuff. Bondage, anal, dirty talk, etc. The thing I never actually did. Another girl wanted me to duck her pussy with the barrel of a gun. Yes, you read the right and no. I have no idea how the logistics would work. If I'm not mistaken, we talked about how we'd use a condom on the gun, you know, for sanitation lol. Celibacy. My wife is totally into it and I think it's weird. One of my ex-girlfriends had a foot fetish. I like 6. So of course I obliged. It was fine until one night when she said, I want to cut off your foot and stick it in my ass. Then duck your stumped leg. I mean, we still had sex, but I was uncomfortable. You know, I actually wish I had an answer for this. I asked my boyfriend once if he had any weird sexual interests that I didn't know about, and he insisted he doesn't. I tried to push the issue further by asking if you had any resource available in the world to do crazy sexual it that you ever wanted. What would it be? After some considerate thinking, he told me that he would use his unlimited resources to take us on a fancy vacation so we could duck in a really nice place. It was the sweetest, most vanilla thing I had ever heard in my entire life. My ex had a belly inflation fetish, which is pushing your belly out to look pregnant. I also thought it was odd that he was very close to a pregnant friend of ours during the time she was pregnant. He also had a fetish which involved the adult model Myra Hills, who has the largest fake boobs. Another one of his fetishes were girls who had DEs. Can't remember the name of girls who had DEs though. One of my ex playthings had a thing for dogs. He loved to get knotted by medium-sized or larger dogs. I didn't really care, because we didn't have a dog at the house, and he was a total freak otherwise. Our other housemate had a wet and messy fetish and would record sessions of him getting cake batter or pudding poured over him. It was weird. Butt plug tails, and having marijuana smoke blown into her V.